Hello everybody, it's me, Kirk Mastin at Mastin Labs, and yeah, welcome to today's live edit. I'm going to give everyone about a minute here to get into the room to watch it. If you are new, please tell us where you're from in the comments. I'd love to see where everyone is tuning in from. We just all got back from Nashville, actually. There was a conference we went to there called the Hybrid Collective, which is a conference put on by a few members of the Find Lab in Utah. Jonathan Canlis, Belinda Olson, and Julie Paisley. Anyway, it was great. We were just there, and it's for people that shoot film and digital together. So it was really fun to be there and support everybody. I also taught a class on doing hybrid edits and matching film to digital, so that was a lot of fun. So if I saw you there and you're watching, hello again, and that was a good time. So I'm going to give it another 10 seconds and we'll get started. I have today 15 photos from the Mastin Labs community. A lot of these photos, actually quite a few of these are shot on Fuji cameras, and we've got a wide variety. I think there were a few Sony camera files in here. I'll be going through and showing the way that I edit from photo to photo. I'll be emphasizing skin tones. Those are things that people have trouble with, and I'll show you my approach to getting really good skin tones. And I'll just be solving various lighting and color issues throughout every photo, trying to get a really nice film accurate edit for you. If at any time you have any questions about how this works, how Mastin Labs works, questions about hybrid photography, please just put them in the comments. We've got a team of people here that will be kind of sorting through those and answering what they can, and then also giving me questions to answer, which I will do. I'll just stop editing and answer them. So this is meant to be really interactive. We're really always excited to be interacting with our community. So please give us questions, and we're here for you. Also, no matter what, you are welcome to join us in the Mastin Labs community on Facebook. Just search Mastin Labs community. Join. It doesn't matter if you already own Mastin Labs products or not. We welcome everyone there, and it's a great place to see what our community is like and the types of looks that you can get with our presets. Feel free to drop in a few raw images, and you'll have the best people in the world. Our community members will jump on it and do really nice edits and show you what your images can look like with Mastin Labs. So on that note, let's get started. Again, I've got a bunch of images here from our community, and I'm going to just start at the top and kind of work my way down. So, all right, let's get started. And please, if you have any questions, put them in the comments, and either Casey or Kyle or Nikki will help get them to me during this live edit. All right, so we got everything from a very Pacific Northwestern dude drinking beer to this beautiful shot of this one with this amazing like flower headdress to, I don't know, people in very green environments. So I'm going to kind of work my way down and show you what we do. So this is from Nathan Smith. This is a Fuji file. It is from, let me tell you exactly what type of camera it's from. It's from an X Pro 1, and yeah, let's get started. So he didn't specify what preset to use on this, so I'm going to do two kind of wildly different edits. He has Caucasian skin, so one thing that a lot of people ask is what type of film preset or film is best for what type of skin type. And in general, I've found that any of the Kodak films are really good for light Caucasian skin. So for example, this guy's skin. So I'm going to do two edits. I'm going to do one with Kodak Everyday with Ektar, and then I'm going to go into Portra. We've had a lot of people in the community asking about Portra edits, and I'm going to do a Portra edit, and then I'm going to show them to you side by side. So our system is really quite easy. Basically, you just pick the film that you want to use. So in this case, we'll just pick Ektar. Sometimes you can get a perfect edit in one click. Sometimes you need to adjust temperature, tint, or exposure. Those are totally normal things. No preset in the world can know what the exposure should be or the temperature or tint. Those are the only things that you're going to have to do when you're editing your photos. So right off the bat, this is a little overexposed for me. So I applied Ektar, and I'm going to just decrease the exposure a tiny bit. His face is just a little bit too warm, or not too warm, too blown out. So I decreased the exposure. He overall is looking a little bit pale for me, so I'm going to increase the white balance. And really good skin tone is a fine line between skin being too warm or too cool, or too magenta or too green. I always start with temperature because I feel that's the easiest thing for most people to see. We can all see if something is too cool or too warm. So it's good to get that dialed in first, and then if you feel that the skin tones aren't quite right, you can play with tint, and that's really where you get perfect skin. For a lot of people, the best way to approach this is to look for something neutral in the picture. And by neutral, I mean something that is either like gray or white or black. And there you can usually see if you have a little bit too much magenta or too much green in the photo. So looking at this image, I would say he's actually pretty neutral already. I'm looking at his black shirt, and if anything, it looks a little bit too cool. So I might warm it up just a tiny bit more. But if I were to adjust tint, I don't think it would get any better than how it is. I think tint is pretty much right on in this photo. Yeah, I mean, I'll play with it so you can see, but if I go a little bit too magenta, you know, he's starting to look a little magenta, and if I go more towards green, it's a little bit too green. So I'm just going to go with the original tint slider. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of our tone profiles to bring back a little more detail in his face. So the tone profiles come from the Fuji Frontier scanner that's behind me, where we do all of our testing to make these presets so that they accurately match film. And one of the settings on the Frontier are these tone profiles where you have all hard, all soft, highlight soft, etc. And what they do is they affect either the highlights or the shadows in an image, or both. And you use these when you're scanning film to solve certain lighting problems, and you use them in Lightroom to solve the same lighting problems. We've recreated them in Lightroom. So in this case, I'm going to use highlight soft to bring in a little bit of detail on his face without affecting the rest of the photo too much. So that was like the smallest change in the world. I'll go back and forth a few times so you can see it. But that's how the tone profiles work. They're not drastic changes. They're just small little tweaks to make a subtle adjustment to just make the photo perfect. So this is before. And you can see it's a little blown out on his face, and the background here is a little blown out. And there is after. So that kind of deals with the highlight on his face. If I wanted to bring out a little more detail in the bottom of his beard and the front of his shirt, I would do all soft. And what that means is that I'm not only, so soft basically means bring detail back in. It's the literal Japanese translation of the controls on the Frontier. Soft means to bring detail back in, so I brought it in on the highlights. I can also bring it in on the shadows by using all soft. So I'm just going to hit all soft, and here's before. You can see how deep the shadows are, and here is after. Just a little bit more detail in the shadows and under his beard. So that to me looks like a finished photo. And you can see the before and after. So, you know, everything looks accurate. It looks clean and nice. There's no bizarre colors. He's a little bit saturated because I'm using Ektar, which is the most saturated preset or film that we have. So for some people, this is the exact right amount of color for you, and for other people, it's kind of too much color. I found that Ektar is kind of where things are headed as an overall trend, especially in wedding photography. People want bold, bright, rich color. Kind of this moody, washed out look is, I mean, it's still really great, but it's kind of, just from what I've noticed, is a little bit on the decline, and people are returning to color. So I think Ektar is going to be really big. this year. That's my opinion. I've said it in every video. And it's great on wedding images. If this is too colorful for you, you can use something more traditional like Portra. So I'm going to clone this photo. I'm going to get out of the comparison mode here. And I'm going to reset and go and do a Portra edit. And you can see the huge difference. I usually do it the other way around. I'll do a Portra edit and then the bright Ektar edit. Because now when you see Portra, you're going to be like, oh my God, there's like no color in this at all. But it actually is true to Portra film. So this is a Fuji file, so I'm going to go to Portra, Original for Fuji, and do Portra 400. And then, like in the previous image, I'm going to warm it up. And I would say for Portra, it needs a little bit of magenta. So I'm going to slide the slider towards magenta and warm it up a little bit further. And bring down the exposure just a tiny bit. All right, so I'm kind of fine tuning this. I'm also going to do highlight soft. And play with the tint slider until I feel that his skin tone looks pretty neutral. There we go. So, quite a big difference between Ektar and Portra Original. These two films couldn't be further apart in terms of color, contrast, saturation, but they each serve a different purpose. So I'm going to show you both together. And you can see on the left we've got Ektar, and on the right we've got Portra 400. They're both adjusted for optimal skin tone for that film, but you get just a drastically different look at the end. And that's because they are just different films, and that's how they look. Okay, we have a question from the audience.
Savannah would like to know for the best results when you're using your preset, and maybe this has to do with color too, but Fuji 400 or Ektar, is there a specific ISO that will give you the best results?
Okay, so the question is from Savannah, and she's asking, is there a particular ISO that will give you the best results for a preset? So yes and no. So no, in the sense that the ISO that you shoot in general does not affect the look of a preset. And also, I've also had this question, like if I'm shooting 400 speed film, do I want to have my digital camera, if I'm trying to match them together, do I want to have my digital camera shooting at ISO 400? And that totally makes sense to ask that question. It actually will not affect the final image, what ISO you use. Now, the part where I say yes is that in extreme cases, yes, ISO will really affect the final image. And this happens when you're shooting, at ISO 3200 and above. So like shooting at ISO 3200 or 6400 or what is it, 12,800 or 1250? I don't know, just the newer cameras go up to like infinity.
Oh, 12,800.
Is it 12,800? Okay. Anyway, when you get up to really high ISOs, the color information gets degraded. So the camera is trying to discern between different colors on the sensor, and the higher the sensitivity, the higher the ISO, the harder it is for the sensor and for Lightroom or Capture One or whatever program you're using to determine where a color changes to another color. So when you apply a preset or you apply no preset, you're just doing a hand edit, you have less quality color information to work from, even if it's not grainy. So a lot of camera manufacturers will be like, hey, you can shoot at like 1 million ISO and it looks like the grain of 400 ISO. Well, that's great, but the quality of the color information is not as good. So if you're having trouble with our presets or with any company's presets, and you're shooting at super high ISOs, that is usually the reason why. So I hope that answers that question well. Okay, let's move on. Let's get away from the bearded dude, and we are going to move on to something else. But thank you, Nathan Smith, for sending this in. I'm just going to go right to this picture because it's just so cool. I love this picture. It was actually submitted for a previous edit. I never got to it, and I found it again today. So Shelby Burks, thank you for sending this in. She wanted me to use Fuji Original, and this is a Nikon file from a Nikon D3200. Cool. All right, so Shelby, let me find Fuji Original for you. Fuji Color Original Nikon. And we're just going to start with Fuji 400H. I applied it. I applied Fuji 400H. This image, before I even applied it, I mean, is way too cool. The white balance is way too cool, and it's a little underexposed. So I applied Fuji 400H, and now I'm going to increase the temperature and play with the exposure. So I'm just going to increase the temperature here a little bit. Fuji 400H, the film itself is very pastel looking, and that's the reason people like it. It doesn't have the deep saturated colors of Ektar, but it's just kind of a lighter, more airy film than most films. So I'm not expecting it to look much different than this. This is how Fuji 400H looks. So I've just applied Fuji 400H, increased the temperature. I'm going to increase the exposure just a tiny bit, and I'm just going to fiddle around a little bit with temperature and tint and see if I can make it just perfect. I backed off on tint towards green just a tiny bit. Not much of a difference, but that looks really good to me. One thing I'm going to do to this image that is not preset related is I'm going to crop it to 645. So in Lightroom, that would be 4 by 5. So 4 by 5 / 8 by 10. And this is the same shape as the medium format film cameras that I usually shoot. So that used to be a Contax 645, and then later it was a Pentax 645. Highly recommend those cameras. They're way cheaper and in my opinion just as good. And this is the shape of the frame. And I really like it for verticals. I feel like it's much more powerful. I feel that 35 millimeter shapes, so most cameras that we own are 35 millimeter ratios. I feel when you tip them on their end and you do a portrait, they're just too tall. There's like just too much information either at the top or the bottom. And 645 just feels like perfect to me. So that's something I almost always do. And you'll see in every edit video, I always crop my verticals to 645. But you do whatever you want. Yeah, anyway, so there you go. That is a Fuji 400H edit. I'll show you the before and after. Super easy, no magic formula. A lot of people ask, how do I get that light and airy look? And I just want to point out that the original photo, the way that the original photo was shot, lends itself to the light and airy look because she is in open shade. So open shade means you're in the shade, you don't have direct sunlight on you, and it's even. And that's really important because that reduces the contrast across the entire subject. So that's the first factor. And the second is that she's backlit. So you see this like kind of hair light behind her. There's no artificial lights in this photo. This is just the sun setting somewhere behind her and she's in the shade. And that is the secret to that light and airy California wedding photography style. It really has almost nothing to do with presets or anything else. It's just shooting shallow depth of field, backlit, open shade. That's the formula. Of course, Mastin Labs helps to take you the last, 10, 20%, but that's really the secret. So we always have people ask about that. And that is also how you get really nice skin tones, is that you're shooting in really nice, soft, even light. So that's a little pro tip. If you're struggling with skin tones, take a look at the light you're shooting in and the quality of it and how soft it is. And that's going to get you further than any preset or anything. So, all right. Thank you so much, Shelby. That was a super nice image to edit, and I love dogs, so I was really happy to have a dog in the photo. Okay. I really, really want to edit this one. So this is from Janica Schultz, and she is requesting Portrait Pushed, and I can tell that this is a Sony file. So we've got all different kinds of camera brands today, which is awesome. This is the 7 Mark III. So the A7, is it the A? No, what is it? A or R? A7?
This one?
Yeah, that's
A7R3.
Okay, it's the A7R3. So it's the same camera that we're using to record this right now. Anyway, super nice Sony camera. Janica sent this in, and she wanted Portrait Pushed. We've really enjoyed the Sony A7R3. It's been an awesome camera. It's kind of sold me on the Sony system. I was like a Canon person forever, but yeah, they're super nice, man, and they're just compact and solid. Okay, this is Portrait Pushed. All right, Sony. And for some reason, oh, never mind. There are some experimental presets in here that I'm noticing that are not part of your package, but they happen to be in here. So just ignore that. We're just gonna go right into Portrait Pushed. So Portrait Pushed, I'll show you the difference between, say, Portrait Pushed, Portrait 160 push 2 stops, and Portrait 400 push 2 stops. So, quickly, what is push film? Push film is when, traditionally with real film, like analog film, it's when you rate the film higher than what it actually is, and then you tell the lab to develop it a little bit longer and to push it in development. So for example, back in the day, back when the dinosaurs were around, I would be shooting Portrait 400, and I would need actually an 800 speed film to be shooting where I am. There's not enough light. So I would set my meter to ISO 800, I would shoot, and then I'd go to the lab and say, please take this film and push it 1 stop, meaning overdevelop it in the chemistry to make it act as though it's ISO 800 film. That is push film in a nutshell. One cool thing beyond just getting more sensitivity out of the film so you can shoot in darker light is that you also change the characteristics of the film. You increase the contrast, the saturation changes, and you introduce color casts into the shadows and sometimes the highlights. So a lot of people use it for stylistic reasons, and that's why it was really cool to make a push pack. So we've done that with Fuji and Portra, and that's my little intro on push film. Oh, we have a question.
Yeah, do you think, this is from Nancy, she would like to know if you think that all pictures require lens correction.
Okay, so Nancy asks, do all pictures require lens correction? Okay, here it's another yes and no. So if you want, in my opinion, if you want a medium format look, one quality of medium format cameras is that they have really well corrected lenses that don't have much distortion or vignetting. So when you do lens correction, let me try to find something that was shot really, maybe this image. I'll answer it while I'm editing this. So let's do Portrait 160. I applied it. I'm going to increase the exposure, increase the warmth. This is such a cool image. I love this. Let me see. There we go. Okay, so this was shot at f1.8. When you shoot a lens wide open, like at its maximum openness, or you want that really shallow depth of field, you are making a trade-off because you're getting a lot of distortion and vignetting. I found that if you use lens correction, and you remove that, it feels more medium format. I'll show you what I mean. So this is, let me just get this to the finish line. Okay, this looks super cool. Love this image, really nice. I'm gonna do lens correction. And you see how all the vignetting just like disappeared. There wasn't much distortion. That's because it's an 85mm lens. Wide angle lenses have a lot of distortion. Telephotos don't have as much. But you can see how the vignetting just disappeared. If you combine that with the 645 edit, it starts to feel like a magazine, right? Like if you look at this image, doesn't it feel like the cover of a magazine? And that to me, it comes from two things. One is that the shape of this frame, the 645 shape, is the actual shape of a magazine color. So again, I always crop 645 with verticals. You do whatever you want to do, but that's why I do it. And the second thing is when you remove the vignetting and the distortion, I believe it increases the kind of the perceived production value of the photo, like you're using a better camera, a better lens. So to answer your question, I use it almost all the time because I like a flat, like evenly exposed image all the way across. When I was younger, I liked more of that intense, dramatic vignette, which is also good. So it's up to you. I usually use it. So super long way of answering that question. Okay, and we got to edit this image at the same time. So yeah, that was portrait pushed, and I did, what was it I did? 160 push 2 stops. Okay, so I said I was going to show you the difference between this and Portrait 400. I'm going to clone this real quick. I'm going to, let's just go right to 400 and see how it looks. Okay. Let me compare these. Now it's a little bit hard to see on this photo, but maybe you can see it at home. I'm not sure. But in general, the color palette of Portrait 160 push 2 stops on the left has much more red in the shadows. Like you can see it a little bit back here in her hair and in the kind of the wall behind her, compared to Portrait 400, which is on the right side, which in general doesn't have that red cast. Portrait 160 film, when you start to push it, that's the thing it does. It gets that red cast. This was really popular like 8 years ago. This is very familiar with like people that were using Visco, like this kind of that push film look. That really lives inside of Portrait 160 push 2 stops. And that's how the film works. Portrait 400, on the other hand, is a very new film, relatively new film. And it handles pushing really well, like it barely changes. I mean, it changes in contrast mostly and in an increased saturation, but you don't get those color shifts. It's kind of hard to see in this photo, but you just have to take my word for it. And you can see the palette of the Portrait 400 it's got a lot more orange and yellow in it, which is exactly how Portrait 400 is supposed to look. So I find a lot of people use Portrait 160 and Portrait 160 pushed if they're doing something that's more edgy fashion, and Portrait 400 and Portrait 400 pushed is great if you're doing like, lifestyle, like this. Whoops. Like you're shooting families, babies, people. Oh darn it. That's when Portrait and Portrait 400 push look really good. So let me show you. So this is Allison Donahue. Oh wait, who shot this other one? Yeah, Jenica Schultz. So thank you. This is from Allison Donahue. She wanted Fuji push, so I'll do Portrait pushed first and then Fuji pushed. So here's Portrait push 2 stops. Oh wait, this is a Canon file, not Sony. Where are you? Portrait pushed. Oh darn, it's not in here for some reason, the Canon version. All right, well, Nikon is very, very close. Not exactly the same, but you'll get the idea. So here is Portrait Push 2 stops. You can see it just has that pop and that wonderful micro contrast right away. It needs a higher temperature, so I'm going to just increase the temperature. And, whoops, a little bit higher exposure. And the skin tones are a little bit weird because this is not for Canon. This is for Nikon. I apologize about that. But you get the general idea. This could definitely use lens correction because it's so much darker up at the top. There we go. And I'm going to crop it 645. I mean, isn't that better? That is so much better, I think. Like vertical, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to preach that forever. Okay, so there we go. There is a basic Portrait Push edit. It's really good for like lifestyle. And then I'm going to clone this and do a Fuji pushed edit. Fuji color pushed. Fuji color pushed. Whoops, Canon. All right. Let's do 400H pushed. Wow, you can really see the pink and like cyan of Fuji coming through. So it's quite a bit different. I'm actually going to correct it back towards green a tiny bit and a little bit cooler. I'm looking at his pants. I'm assuming that they're not like really a bright purple. They're kind of like a purple blue or like a lavender. So I'm going to kind of adjust for that. So I'm going to go a little more towards green. And I'm going to warm it up just a little bit. So you see how I like went right to something that I felt was neutral. I don't know for sure that his pants are neutral, but I'm going to guess that they're in the neutral range, and I can also compare it against his shirt, which I'm sure is black and white. So I use that as kind of a guide to get that in. And here is a comparison of Portrait pushed and Fuji pushed. Again, if you were seeing it full size, you would see the differences much better, but you can see the general color palette of Portrait is very warm, and the color palette of Fuji is very, I don't know, it's cooler, it's more pastel, it's a little lighter feeling. So definitely different feelings. We have a question.
Yeah, Alex Hitchens would like to know if there's any Sony files in there to edit.
Yes, okay, so Alice want to know if there's any Sony files. Oh, what?
No, it's Alex.
Oh, Alex, not Alice. Okay, sorry, Alex. Yes, I actually just edited a Sony file. It was the A7 Mark III, or 7 or whatever, A7R Mark III. But I will look and see if there's another one here for you. Okay, we got one. We got some GFX files. Those are not the same, but just so you know. All right, we got one right here. So this is by Gary Brink, and it is a 6000. So that would be, what camera is that? The A6000? Is it the crop sensor one? It's the one you have? Okay, yeah, that's a good camera. Okay, so yes, so here is a Sony edit from the A6000. This is by Gary Brink. It did not specify what preset to use, so I'll just do whatever I want. Let's see here. I will do a color edit and a black and white edit. How about that? So let's go back to Fuji Pushed. I really like Fuji Pushed. It's one of my favorites. My favorite preset packs in order would be Kodak Everyday, followed by Fuji Pushed, followed by Ilford. I love those ones. Those are my favorite. Everyone's got their own favorites, but those are mine. Okay. Fuji Color Pushed, Sony. Here's 400H pushed 2 stops. That introduces a little pink in the sky. I'm actually going to do pushed 1 stop, go for a nice clean edit, increase the exposure. And then I'm going to, let me see here. She's got some reflection from the bright purple garment she's wearing, so I'm going to be battling that a tiny bit, but I'm going to use, see this like ground over here, like this concrete under her? That's going to be kind of my neutral point to look at and help me correct. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, it's a little too cool still. Warm it up. Okay, I'm looking down here still. It's a little bit too magenta, so I might go down like 1 or 2 points. And I believe that this part down here on the ground is in the shade, and therefore that light is a little more blue than what is on her face and her arm. So what I'm going to do is actually cool down the photo a tiny bit and let that go blue, because I'm going to assume that it's blue. Does that make sense? Is that kind of a weird way to explain it, or that makes sense? Okay. Yeah, so I either look at their skin tone and just go, what looks like good skin tone, and I work temperature and tint to get there, or I look for something that's neutral. So I know that concrete is generally a neutral color. So that's kind of where I look. Okay, I think if you wanted a kind of a lighter, brighter edit, I'd push the exposure a little bit higher, and then I would kind of even it all out with all soft. Yeah, perfect. I like it. Oh, and I gotta walk the walk, right? We're gonna crop it back down to 645 and show you a before and after. Yeah, that looks really good. She looks super stoked to be doing what she's doing. It looks like a fun festival. All right, so that is a Sony a6000 with, let's see here, Fuji, from the Fuji push pack, the 400H push one stop. And I'm gonna do a quick black and white edit because I think this would look really cool in black and white. All right, where are we at here? Sony, Ilford. What does it look like in Pan F? Oh wait, we don't want to see the before and after. How about like that? Okay. Pan F, how are we looking? Oh, let's see, HP5. Delta 3200. That looks pretty cool. My voice goes way up when I think it's really cool. We're gonna do Pan F 35 millimeter. I'm gonna increase the exposure again a little bit. I like Pan F a lot because it has really deep, nice tones. I kind of just can't help it but go to that over and over. And then I'm gonna play with something here that's really fun. Our black and white packs include color filters. So normally when you shoot real black and white film, like in an analog film in a film camera, you can use color filters to change how that film reacts to your subject. So we've emulated those, and they're in the Ilford pack, and you have a choice between a red, a green, and a yellow filter, and that can change how the image looks dramatically. So I'm gonna just play with that a little bit. So that's with the red filter. You can see that it brought in, there's like a stripe on her costume right here on the front. I mean, that really gets dark, and the scarf gets dark, and her hair gets dark, and that's a cool change. Here's green. That really affected her skin tone. And then yellow. And yellow just made everything like super vibrant. I'm gonna go for, what do I like the most? I kind of like the yellow one. And this is one of those rare times where I would actually maybe add vignette. So I'm gonna do lens correction off, and I might even add a little bit of vignetting with post-crop vignetting. And I'm even gonna add a little neutral density gradient filter from the top. That is a mouthful. Why am I doing that? I'm just trying to bring a little bit of interest back into the middle of the frame. But that looks good. And I'll compare that to the color edit, Two totally different looks for the same image. All right, we have a question.
Yeah, from Rajesh. He would like to know, what's the difference between Fuji 400 and Fuji Pushed? Is there a big difference between the two?
Okay, so Rajesh wants to know the difference between Fuji 400 original and Fuji 400H pushed, like one stop or two stops. Okay, let's find another image and we will show you that. All right. So this image is from Tammy Prieto. It's a Nikon file, and I'm going to show Rajesh the difference between normal Fuji, like box speed Fuji, and push Fuji. Fuji Color Original, Nikon. All right, let's do box speed Fuji 400H. When I say box speed, that means you're shooting it at the speed or near the speed indicated on the box. That's a little misnomer for 400H, because if you shoot the actual film, I think it's really a 100 speed film if you want to get the look that you see that people get out of it that are famous. But anyway, I digress. You'd shoot it near box speed, and that is the intended look of the film by the manufacturer. So here is 400H. You get that light, airy pastel look. I'm going to warm it up just a bit. It's a little cool. It's a little cool and a little green. And here's a little before and after of Fuji 400H box speed. And now I'm going to duplicate it and show you the difference of doing a push version of Fuji 400H. So this means that if I had Fuji 400H in my camera, I would pretend that it was 800 speed or 1600 speed and then tell the lab to push it. And that would change how the film looks. So Fuji Color Pushed. And this is a Nikon file, Fuji Color Pushed, Nikon. All right. All right, so there is 400H, and I'm just going to roll over it, and you can see how much it changes. And here's push two stops. It's just like a huge change in terms of contrast and color. It's like turning up the volume on it. In fact, I would cool it down a little bit with pushed if we want to get more of a real comparable look between the two. So if you equalize them, what is like kind of the absolute difference? So there is, and I hope you can see this at home again on the split screen, but on the left we've got Fuji 400H box speed. It's got that really nice soft pastel look that's really, really popular right now, like in Southern California especially. And then on the right we've got Fuji 400H pushed. Was it two stops or one? Let me see here. It was one stop. So already in that one stop, you've got more saturation, actually more micro contrast, more contrast, and just a more vibrant look. So hopefully that helps. So yeah, very good questions today. I really enjoyed that. We will be editing every other week, doing live edits. And yeah, please give us your questions. And if there are any themes that you want me to edit to or anything in particular you want me to cover, just let me know before the event starts and I can try to tailor it to what your questions are. But anyway, thank you for submitting photos. If you're new to Mastin Labs, please continue your journey with us by joining the Mastin Labs community on Facebook. Just type in Mastin Labs community, hit join. We'll bring you in. You can drop off some raw files for the community to edit, and you can see today how your images would look with Mastin Labs. So if you've been wanting to find a clean, vibrant style that you can kind of hang your hat on and know that your work is going to be timeless and look good 40, 50 years from now, I think you found the right place. If that is what you're looking for. We do not follow trends. We are not a trend. we are true to film, and film never dies and it never looks bad. So give it a shot, come on in, drop off some photos, and let our awesome community show you what's possible. So, all right, until next time, thank you.